Good morning. This is Dr. Rutledge, and recording a video related to a question I received about mini-gastric bypass patients and the problems of hypoglycemia and the need that's been reported for Roux-en-Y patients who suffer, in some cases, a crippling and sometimes very dangerous form of hypoglycemia. And since both the MGB and the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass are both gastric bypasses, the question arises, what differences have you seen in the MGB patients, and is there a way to explain these differences physiologically? So let's talk about the post-gastrectomy hypoglycemia. And post-gastrectomy hypoglycemia has actually been seen for almost 100 years, ever since we started as surgeons taking out part of the stomach. And what happens is what's called dumping syndrome, and there are two kinds, early and late. And actually I used to get this wrong. I was visiting India, and a junior associate of Dr. Tantia in Calcutta pointed out that I had the early and late mixed up, so I have to apologize every time I talk about this. If you go back and look at some of my older YouTube videos, you can find that I had mixed up the two. So dumping basically is a set of symptoms that occur after eating in patients who have lost the pylorus and have a direct connection from the stomach into the small intestine. And the one kind of dumping, early dumping, is where you put a high concentrated bolus, a lump of food, into the small intestine. And what this does is, like a sponge, it pulls in water, and with that it expands, and it acts like this almost increasing size, and so that it causes the fluid and the volume of food to expand, and this hurts. And if it gets large enough, it can cause tremendous amount of pain and really devastate the patient. And so this is type 1 dumping. And type 2 dumping is where you dump a good amount of sugar or simple carbohydrates into the small intestine. It's not prevented from that dump from the stomach into the small intestine. And the sugar is delivered rapidly into the bloodstream. That is, the sugar absorption of the small intestine is good, not so good in the stomach. And when it's dumped quickly into the small intestine, the pancreas responds by releasing insulin, which is good. Now, the pancreas is pretty well calibrated. When it starts to see sugar coming into the bloodstream, they know about how much sugar is going to be coming because they're used to the signal, meaning there's a moderate amount of sugar in the stomach that's still to come. So they say, well, I'm seeing a signal of 1 to 2, but it probably means I'm going to have a 10 level of sugar coming, so I'll put out a 10 level of insulin. On the other hand, when the sugar is dumped right into the small intestine, the sugar is fully and quickly absorbed, and you see a signal of 1. Oftentimes it only means you've got a level of 1 sugar, but the pancreas is used to seeing a signal of 1 means they need an insulin level of 10, and so they put out an insulin level of 10, and this drives the blood sugar down to very low levels. So it's called hypoglycemia. And actually people can get this if you just have a high sugary beverage, sometimes mixed with caffeine. So rapidly drinking something like a soda pop can often lead to this, even in people without surgery. But the surgery, particularly where the stomach is connected to the small bowel, makes this much more common. And most people know about this, and it's particularly difficult in bypass patients because of the short distance and the absence of the pylorus between the stomach, the esophagus, and the small intestine. So sweets cause hypoglycemia. Now, this is true in MGB patients and also true in Roux-en-Y patients. And so it's odd that the Roux-en-Y patients seem to be much more devastated by profound, deep hypoglycemia that seems difficult to control, whereas it occurs in MGB patients. And in our experience, hypoglycemia or type 2 dumping after MGB is really common. We expect it. We rely on it. We use it all the time. The difference is it's very easily identified. Our patients receive such a profound negative impact that routinely they begin to recognize that this causes that. So it's as if you have a mouse and you notice that every time the mouse touches a lever, the mouse gets shocked. Well, it doesn't take long until the mouse realizes that pushing the lever causes the shock, so the mouse stops it. The key thing is, though, to have an immediate response so that the patient can understand, or the mouse in my analogy can understand, that this is related to that. And because the MGB is a direct connection to the small bowel, we see very rapid onset of hypoglycemia with small amounts of glucose. And so our patients, number one, are trained, educated, knowledgeable that a bolus of sugary sweets, like trying to drink a Coca-Cola quickly with an MGB, will result in a very immediate negative feedback, and so they stop it. And usually you'll get 1 or 2 phone calls for early MGB patients where they've had an event like this and they say, holy mackerel, what was that? And we say, well, that's dumping, and you can't eat sugar fast, and that's good. And how is this different from the Roux-en-Y? Well, the Roux-en-Y over time develops a neogastric pouch. And what we mean by that is the roux limb, that's the half of the Y, that's connected to the esophagus, usually begins to change over time. And in fact, Dr. Gagne has even tried to de-roux some of his Roux-en-Y patients because they gradually dilate and become more like a stomach pouch. They become baggy and they can hold a large volume. And the research shows that they get almost 100% absorption of sugar from that pouch as it grows, so that a large bolus of sugar can be obtained. But what we see is that it's less rapidly absorbed, and when it occurs, the hypoglycemia seems to be fixed and profound and unpredictable. And what we think is the long roux pouch lets it sit there so that we see changes in the ability to rapidly reverse the hypoglycemia and to predict the hypoglycemia because of the very large roux limb. And as that becomes a neogastric or a new stomach pouch, the prediction of when hypoglycemia will occur, with what it occurs, is difficult. Plus, the amount of sugar that's taken in and rapidity leads to a profound increase in the insulin, which is hard to reverse even by giving subsequent sugar. So these combinations seems to be the reason that the MGB is very much affected by hypoglycemia, but it seems like it's a very sharp and profound and quick symptom, which can lead to rapid modification of the diet of the patient and rapid resolution when it occurs. Usually we say to our patients is to keep a packet of sugar or 2 in their purse or their pocket, because it can occur when you're out. Maybe you decide to have an ice cream or something like that and you're unprepared. And what we found is very easy to reverse it in the MGB patients, and particularly later as they begin to get 8 and 10 years out, they begin to forget the rules of MGB and think, oh, I'm just normal. And unfortunately, an MGB patient can have massive weight loss and resolution of diabetes and many other good features, but the MGB really never allows the patient to go back to, quote, normal, where they can eat junk food and other things like that. So those are the differences we see in the MGB and the Roux-en-Y with hypoglycemia. I hope this answers some questions, and please feel free to contact me if you have other questions, and we'll hopefully produce some more videos for you soon. Thanks. Bye.